two men who have heavy criticism for the president and heavy concerns about the present are Senators John McCAIN, who, of course, is the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican presidential candidate, member of the Senate Armed Services Committee as well. Senator McCAIN, you say, yes, this happened in Paris, but it is a wake-up call to the United States as well. Do you believe this could happen just as easily in a major city there? And what does that mean about what needs to be done, sir?
Well, I think it is obviously a threat to the United States and has been for a long time in light of a lack of strategy, which has characterized the Obama administration's approach to this growing threat, which Senator Graham and I have predicted for years. And there are various steps along the way of failure to address this issue, which has resulted in this and Beirut and the Russian airliner with tragic loss of 224 Russian lives as well. So unfortunately, we have predicted that we were not defeating ISIS, and they were certainly not contained, and we need boots on the ground, and we need to have a strategy, not just more of the same. More of the same doesn't get it, Chris.
Well, we are using the words from the White House of redoubling the effort. Senator Graham, that is not enough to you. You say more needs to be done. You've said that another 9/11 is coming, and it's coming from Syria. What do you think needs to be done? Make the case.
Well, walking faster in the wrong direction is not redoubling your efforts, it's just going the wrong way. To the French president, my heart breaks for you and your country. You declared war on ISIL. You did the right thing. But 10 planes dropping 20 bombs is not the adequate response. To the French, to the American president, we should rally the entire region. They're there to be rallied, to go in on the ground and destroy ISIL. In World War II, we went to Tokyo, we went to Berlin. We should go as an international force led by the region, the Arabs and Turkey, to destroy ISIL on the ground in Raqqa. We'll have to be part of that international force. But if we don't change our strategy and come up with a ground component, there will be another 9/11.
But as both of you gentlemen know, there's been great resistance to that among the American populace. Just for a point of parallel, Senator McCAIN, here, yes, they're in shock.
I don't buy that
yes,
at
they
all.
want more.
I don't buy that at all.
You don't buy what, sir?
I don't buy that the American people are reluctant to destroy ISIL. The American people are willing to send American forces to Syria and Iraq to protect the American homeland. When people say that, they don't know what they're talking about. The American people are ready to take on radical Islam because they see it for what it is, a threat to our homeland and our way of life.
Chris, could I just add?
But Senator Graham, it comes as no surprise. Absolutely. But Senator McCAIN, let me just give you some context for it. I'm not making this up. As you well know, there are many polls that show the American people don't want American women and men put at risk abroad. Do you believe that's changing, or do you believe it's time to just make that decision as a point of leadership?
I think it's rapidly changing. This has to have had a significant effect, and also the fact is that this president has not led. It takes presidents to tell the American people about the threat. And as tragic as this is, it is certainly predictable when you look at the decisions that were made by this president beginning in 2009, his failure to address Syrian violation of the use of chemical weapons, refusal to arm the Free Syrian Army, and measure after measure where the president has not led. But the American people have been awakened, and these people, by the way, could have easily bought a plane ticket to the United States from Paris.
So, Senator Graham, when you look forward in terms of things that have to be done as a man who wants to be president of the United States, a big point of concern will be refugees. The U.S. leadership had been moving in the direction of letting in more. Now you see what happened here, and the investigative findings about at least one, if not more, had been infiltrating through the refugee process. What do you think is the right balance, sir?
Well, there are people on my side of the aisle who say that if you just stop the refugees from coming to America, that fixes the problem. There's about 20 different ways to get to America. Refugees are just one of 20 lanes. Shutting that lane down does not protect us. So anybody coming to America needs to be vetted and vetted well, but we can't shut off Syria, people being raped and murdered. But yes, ISIL can intermingle among refugees. They're doing that. But there's other ways for them to get here. So my advice is that eliminating the refugee problem doesn't solve the problem. You've got to go in on the ground and hit them there. I'm looking for an away game when it comes to ISIL, not a home game. I want to fight them in their backyard. So shutting off refugees doesn't destroy ISIL. I have a plan to destroy ISIL. Use the armies in the region, which are large and professional, integrate our forces among those armies with the French and other NATO nations, have an air campaign supplemented by a ground campaign of 80 to 100,000 ground forces, of which will be about 10%, and go in on the ground and destroy these people before they hit us here at home and continue to do damage. There is no other way to defeat this enemy other than a ground component, of which we will have to lead and be part of.
Chris, could I just add?
Well, as you know, go ahead, please, Senator.
The refugee problem is the symptom of failure. It's not the cause of failure.
Yes.
The refugee problem would not be there if it hadn't been for a failed foreign policy, a lack of strategy, a lack of addressing this issue seriously. So, of course, we don't want anyone coming to the United States who might do damage in the United States. But the fact is, until you address the problem of ISIS, you're going to continue to have refugees.
And can I just add one thing? ISIL, when we put 50 special forces on the ground, that reinforced the view of ISIL that Obama's not serious about degrading and destroying ISIL. And if all the French do is drop a few bombs, that reinforces ISIL, that we don't have the stomach for this fight. Now, I'm running for president, but we don't have to January 2017 to deal with this. I offer my services to my president as a Republican to rally my party, along with Senator McCAIN, to a different strategy, a more robust response that would require a ground component. I stand ready to help President Obama because we need to do this quickly or they're coming here.
Senator Graham, as you know, members of the military say a suggestion of 8,000, 10,000 troops, which simple math is the number that you're suggesting right now, won't be enough. That you need a huge U.S. military presence on the ground there, akin to what we saw in Iraq, if not Afghanistan,
That's
to
not what
push
I've
back
heard.
ISIL there in any effective way?
I don't know.
Then, you know, look, the idea that there's just one opinion on this would be simplistic, but certainly many in the military, as I'm sure both of you gentlemen know, think you need a bigger presence. But then the question becomes, well, then what? If you push them back, as you did with al-Qaeda forces and the Taliban, how do you hold that land? How do you deal with the political change that needs to happen? Because you're fighting an idea, not just a ground force. What about those concerns?
Real concerns. The regional force that I'm talking about would be large. You've got Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Jordan and Turkey have large armies. They're ready to fight ISIL because ISIL's a threat to them. Bush 41 had a coalition. The good news from my point of view, according to General King, is that about 10% of this 80 to 100,000 force needs to be American. But you're right, Chris, we need to hold the ground. We're down to 10,000 people in Afghanistan. If we keep them there, they will hold. If we'd left the 10,000 in Iraq, we'd have been okay. So you do have to hold. This is a generational struggle. But you have got to destroy these guys militarily, and that means an American ground force, not 100,000 people in my view.
Could I just finally add, if the president had any sense at all, he would call in David Petraeus, Jack Keane, General Mattis, all these guys that made the surge work. The surge worked. We had it under control. Call in those people that are really the most respected in America and the world, and they'll give him a strategy. They've talked about it publicly, and I'm confident using those people instead of the feckless statements like we heard this morning from the president's spokesman. We can succeed. America is still the strongest nation on earth, and ISIS is not invincible. It's a matter of whether we have the will to do it.
Senator McCain, Senator Graham, thank you very much for your perspective on this. This conversation has to continue. Every time there's a new piece, like what happened with these attacks, there becomes a new priority. Thank you, gentlemen, both. Let's get back to Michaela now in New York.